It all depends how deep into the sport you want to go.
Well, I was going to say, is there a time in the garage where you're looking all your stuff and say, you know, maybe I overdid it?
Yes, there's always that time, and usually you don't realize it till after you've already done it.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, and for the second week in a row, we're going gold prospecting today. This is the second part of a two-part episode recapturing a day spent in the Swift River in Byron, Maine, with members of the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club. There are hundreds of members of this club from all parts of the state, and they share one thing in common: gold fever. And now that I've tried it out for myself, I can see why this is so addictive. First, it's a hobby that gets you outdoors. Second, it's got the thrill of the chase element. You really do get excited about the possibilities of coming home with a trophy each and every time out. Third, just like hunting, you get better at it with practice. You can read the rivers, understand how gold behaves, because gold moves in a fast whitewater. And with experience, you can guess where it's going, figure out where it's hiding. Fourth, just like many sports, you're always dreaming about that next new piece of equipment. Today, we're going to fire up the big stuff. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. First, a recap. A few weeks ago, I spent a whole morning in the Swift River in Byron, Maine. I learned that you can search for gold in almost any Maine river, but this one happens to be particularly famous for giving up some pretty good nuggets now and then. People have been prospecting this stream since the 1800s. Second, I learned that you can use a variety of tools in your search for gold. There are sluice boxes that use the stream itself to wash away the lighter sediment while the gold flakes are trapped. There are rocker boxes that create little waves. They look a bit like cradles and let a small bit of water ripple back and forth over your shovel full of sediment, trapping the heavier materials like garnet, magnetite, and gold. Third, I learned that there are power wheels and motorized dredges that can handle more material. But most important, I learned that at the end of the day, it all comes back to panning. What you've seen in the old westerns, a prospector swishing water over a pan of silt and gravel, looking for those bright, shiny flecks of gold. It all comes back to panning.
Then you get it down in the stream, and you're going to shake it up really good. So again, you get all of that stuff into suspension, so that the heavy material will just fall right down through. You can see that the little bits of gravel and stuff are here at the top, and you got these rocks on the top. That's all light material. And then you're going to, again, shake it up nice. You get those rocks on top. And it's just like a wave coming in on a beach on a nice summer day in a lake.
So real gentle.
Yeah, you don't want to dump it out. You want the water to wash it out. And then, usually this is the heavier material. And you've got a couple little bit left in there, and you just do what we call fanning back.
Okay, yeah. So,
and you can see the black right here.
Yep.
That's the magnetite. There's some red in there. That's going to be your garnet. And I don't see any gold in this pan, but I wasn't expecting it.
Last week we learned how to use the non-motorized tools. This week we're firing up the dredges. The idea is to process as much river bottom gravel as possible in one day, and it's not much. You don't want it to seem like too much work. You still want it to be a hobby. There are limits to the size of the equipment you can use, and we'll get into that in a little while. There are a bunch of Central Maine gold prospectors on the river with me right now. Rob, Mark, Phil, several others, Rosie. We'll start today's show with Rosie because she set up a power wheel in the river. It's not big or fast or loud. It's just a slowly spinning disc that does what all the other equipment does: separate the heavy stuff from the light stuff.
We'll meet Rosie up here. Rosie's kind of our local prospecting legend. She's been doing it since she's 4 years old.
Third generation?
Yeah, third generation gold prospector. So when she's in a location, there's probably a reason for it.
So when people come to this area, they already know about Rosie?
Most of the time.
Do, yep.
If we have a lot of people come from out of state on vacations.
Right, yeah.
And of course, being the main club, they'll contact us. And I always get phone calls. Where do I go? Who do I see? What do I need for permission? So on and so forth. And I always tell them, go to Coos Canyon, Byron, Maine, look up Rosie, and she'll help you out. She'll point you in the right direction, where to go, and they always leave happy. Whether they find gold or not, I don't know anybody that's ever left not happy.
Do they have to bring their own stuff, or some of it's available here to rent?
Rosie rents out some equipment. I think all hand stuff, right? Yeah, Rosie rents out all the hand sluice boxes, gold pans. Anybody that wants to motorize, if they attend one of our club outings, we usually have equipment there they can use, or they have to bring their own. Because most of this equipment costs a fair amount of money when you start getting them motorized. A good sluice box is going to run you $100. Gold pan, $10. You can see where it starts scaling up. And as we go along later in the day, you'll see the bigger equipment gets even more expensive.
So it's probably a sickness where every nugget of gold you get goes right back into the hobby.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's, you know, I've been hunting and fishing most of my life, and you know, if you're hunting, you're always looking at the next rifle or the next tree stand or so forth. If you're fishing, it's the rod.
Yeah.
You know, it's always you're stepping up, and the same thing with prospecting. You're always looking for the next thing to help you out, and it might work a little bit better in the river. About 4 years ago, I started looking for very small equipment that I could use to dredge up material and capture gold, and I started producing. I came up with my own concepts, just a lot of trial and error, and came up with a small design of equipment that I now sell, and it works very well. And it's very handheld, portable, little 12-volt unit. You can fit it right in your backpack and take it off with you. But it helps get the gold off of bedrock, where it's very, you know, you can't really get that last bit of gold off of bedrock with a shovel, and so this allows you to get in there and get that material.
Yeah. This is really when you know you need therapy.
Yeah, yes.
Gotta get that last bit of gold.
Well, when you shoveling, you always, especially in the water, you always have a sense that you're losing material.
Yeah.
It's because it's always falling away as you're digging it up.
You're watching it go.
And yeah, so you're always, and gold being the heaviest, you know it's going right to the bottom. It's always going to be hard to get that last bit.
I need a minute to get over near to Rosie's power wheel and face the other way so that all that noise from a 2-inch dredge operating nearby doesn't drown us all out. So we'll give the sponsors what they paid for, and then we'll get right down to the river and take a listen to our first motorized piece of gold prospecting equipment today. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. We're in the Swift River in Byron on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Today is part 2 of a 2-part show. We're in the Swift River in Western Maine, in the tiny town of Byron, just north of Coos Canyon, a well-known scenic spot where gorges cut through bedrock. I'm at the banks of the river with members of the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club. Last week, we learned how to use the basic gold prospecting equipment, the pans, the sluices. Today, it's the motorized stuff. Okay, now we're down by the riverside with Rosie, and we have a mechanized pan. What do you call this exactly?
It's a gold wheel. This is the Gold Magic gold wheel, my favorite. I've tried a lot of different ones. And the design of it is it's a spiral panner. So you'll throw your gravel in at like 3 o'clock. This is set at a 45-degree angle, and you have the water come up to the center of the pan. And you throw your gravel in at 3 o'clock. As it spirals around, the riffles have the spiral to them. It will lift everything heavy right up and drop it in the little cup in the center. All the light stuff will just roll out.
So here we go.
So you can just shovel in. You'll see how the pink sand is going up? That's one of the heavier minerals in the river here. So that's showing you how it's already classifying.
So that's like magnetite, garnet?
Yes. Yeah. We don't have a lot of black sand in our river. We have a ton of the pink sand, which is the garnet. And then there's always a lot of downtime just to move a few rocks to get to gravel. But this is a really good unit for an impatient panner. I have a friend he's an elderly gent, and he's the one that actually had me try the Gold Magic for the first time. He has no patience to pan. He'll set this up here, and 10 minutes from now, he'll be a half mile up the river trying someplace else. So he has very little patience for panning, so this works wonderful for him. I use mine mostly when I'm doing concentrates, like after I've gone sluicing and you have all those heavy minerals that you want to pan through.
Well, I would think you'd have to have patience for this.
Yes, it's a very good lesson in patience, any form of gold prospecting. But again, you get focused on what you're doing and you just forget about all your problems and you just really enjoy being out. Maybe you'll find something, maybe you won't. Doesn't matter, it's still a good day.
Yep. In this case, this wheel is the size of a bird bath. It's got spiral construction inside, and as it winds around, it's basically taking the heavier material up towards the center of the wheel where it's going to collect and be easy to sort through. And it just spins at the rate of 1 revolution per 2 seconds, 3 seconds, so not fast, not like a windmill or a fan blade.
And it's very portable, so if I wanted to pull this up and move somewhere else, it would really only take a matter of 5 minutes to reset.
So all the places that we would have used the gold pan, the sluice box, the rocker box, you would use this instead, or just as a different alternative in certain locations?
A different alternative. It's all a matter of what your preference is and what your situation is for water. If there was not enough current here to sluice, then this is a great alternative because you only need about 8 inches of water, and this works fine. So.
Yeah, because the wheel itself is tumbling the material and letting that wash away, the light stuff.
Yes.
This charges up overnight and has a charge for 8 hours the next day?
Yes, which, is easily a whole weekend because when you go out prospecting, you might go out for 8 hours, but you're not shoveling into something like this for 8 hours. You might actually be using it for 2.
Yeah.
Kind of the same with a dredge, You go out dredging for 8 hours. Your dredge isn't running that whole time. You might get 2 hours of dredging in out of 8. The typical person, some guys just like to really work hard.
Well, at 4 hours it's a hobby. At 8 hours it's a real job.
Yeah, it starts to go from, you start getting sore and a little bored. And
I'm good for 4 hours.
Yeah.
I can be at 3.5 and say, wow, I feel great today. I'm going to get an extra hour in. And 4 hours hits and I'm like, done. That's enough shoveling.
Yeah, at some point it becomes a realization that you have an obsession that needs curing.
See how all the black and pink sand is going right up into that center cup?
Yep.
So that's where your gold would be as well, because the gold's like 10 times heavier than these gravels. So if it's carrying that black sand and garnet up, then it's going to also carry the gold up.
Now, so far I don't see anything that looks like gold swirling around in the center where the heaviest stuff would have gone. Is that because I just wouldn't see it yet, or if it's a big nugget I would?
If it was a big nugget, you might catch it going up, but gold really, because it's so heavy, it's always under the other gravels. So you generally don't see gold when you're working most of these methods. The only time you'll see it is like in a sluice box, you'll see it sitting up on the mat. In a dredge, you'll see it sitting up on the mat. In your pan, you don't see it until you get to the very bottom. If it was a huge nugget, you'd see it sitting in that cup because the cup's only so big.
Right.
It would be sticking out. And then all you have to do, when you've shoveled all you want to shovel into it, you just give it a minute or two to kind of classify out. And then I'll grab a pan.
Everything we do ends with a pan at the end of the day.
Really?
You
So
need
no
to
matter
know
what, you go back to the old way.
No matter what, you end up with a gold pan.
Yep.
And I tell people that. They start in the hobby and they want to skip the gold pan. You can't skip it.
So is there a class panning 101?
There is. Rosie puts on a pretty good one, actually.
We give free demonstrations at our store, which is, it's great. A family comes in, they've seen this on TV, they want to try it. And it's really awesome to be a part of helping a family have a great outdoor experience. Most of the time they don't come back with gold, but they come back with a great memory and had a wonderful time.
Where do you send them? There must be some places along the river that are publicly accessible that people can go in as a family and enjoy it.
Yeah, we're really fortunate around here that a lot of the areas along the river are owned by the large timber companies who don't mind us working. One of the large timber companies even allows us to, I issue a permit for them, a permission permit, so that people can go out and work their property. And it says right in there, anything you find you get to keep, but they reserve the right to see it and ask to be shown if they happen to come along. I've only heard of one person ever asking somebody. Generally, you know, the river is, landowners do own the gravel and the rocks under the water, so if you're going to be anywhere near somebody's home or camp, it's always a good idea to do your homework and find out who the landowner is. If you're in an area like this where this is all owned by timber company, we know it's fine to be here. We've already done that legwork to know that it's okay to be here. So when you're ready to pan this out, you just turn off the little thing here. The whole pan will come out, but for starters, all we're interested in looking at is what's in this little cup. Very little gravel in there. I'm just going to get rid of a few of those rocks. And we didn't put much gravel through there, so I'd be surprised if there was any gold, but we would just shake it out and then just swirl it. And just like Mark was describing earlier, the gold would stay right in the top part. You see how the pink's coming down? There's a little trace of the black, and I don't see any gold.
Nope. There's no gold in it.
No gold.
You're just taking us to places there's no gold. You don't want to.
Well, I don't want to show you the good spot.
That's right. The biggest thing that most of the inexperienced will do is not dig their hole deep enough. I mean, we're showing demonstration here. We're only in the top, you know, maybe 6-8 inches. If you get down 1 to 2 feet, then you get into much better material. So it's usually when you're doing this, the first thing you do is just start.
Get the rocks out of the way.
Get some rocks moved. Get like a 4 or 5 foot circle space-wise, and work in that.
And that's why you bring the kids down here, to have them move the rocks.
And exercise.
Yeah, okay, I'm onto that now.
Yeah, one of the biggest things about digging a hole out here is you're not trying to dig a big area. Your biggest effort is to go down.
Gold's heavy, gold sinks. The deeper you go, the more chance you're going to find something that's bigger. Big gold sinks quickly. Small flakes and specks, they kind of stay up in the alluvial gravel. And that's what you're usually finding when you're panning and sluicing is just the stuff that's in the alluvial gravel. You don't have as good a chance as finding nuggets. This is something that people find really amazing. This is a 1 ounce vial. Okay, as far as size goes, probably 3/8 of an inch around, 2 inches long. That would make an ounce of gold, going for around $1,200 an ounce right now.
So if you fill that up,
if you fill this up, you'd have an ounce of gold.
Yeah.
Now, if you took and made this as thin as that pounded gold, that it would cover 2.5 sheets of plywood. That's a very small bottle.
wow.
So that kind of puts it more into perspective. It also would make a thread, if you made a thread out of an ounce of gold, it would make a thread 65 miles long. So gold's an amazing mineral. It's the only mineral that you can work, and you know, I do a little goldsmithing, and a lot of people don't realize. People will say, I bit into this nugget and I couldn't leave a tooth mark, so I know it's not gold. And that's not necessarily the case, because gold gets what we call work hardened as vibrations go through it. So like as a goldsmith, you would heat a piece of gold to glowing red, quench it in water, and then it becomes malleable and you can work it. Every time you tap it, every time you bend it, you're sending a vibration through it. Every time you send a vibration, it gets hotter and hotter. Eventually it gets so stiff you can't work with it. You have to heat it again. Gold in the river is work hardened. It's been pounding through these rocks for eons. So you're not going to be able to bite into it and leave a dent.
People actually have found gold fillings that somebody been out on the river, fisherman or something, and it fell out of his mouth, and somebody panned it up later. So it's
Jeez. The swirling water you can hear in the background is the Swift River in Western Maine. I'm standing in it with a bunch of members of the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club. Rosie is showing off her power wheel as we talk about the hobby of gold prospecting in Maine. Pop quiz, what is the difference between 14 karat and 24 karat gold? Think about your answer, and I'll ask the question next. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Saturday morning at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Today's show is taking place in Western Maine, in the Swift River, learning how to prospect for gold with the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club. There are about 8 or 9 members here. So if anyone should know, it's these guys, right? What is the difference between 14 karat and 24 karat gold?
24 karat is pure gold, no other minerals mixed in. Pure gold it is soft in the respect of it doesn't wear well. So what they do is they add other metals to it, like copper, silver, zinc, nickel. They add those other metals to it to bring the carat down and make the metal more durable, so it wears better. So 14 karat jewelry is very common because it makes it hard enough that it can stand up to a lot of wear, and it's just not going to wear right off. You can look at my ring right here. I can't get it off, but I can show you. 14 karat, and you see how much yellower the pieces of gold? These are wedding bands. I made our wedding bands out of 14 karat stock, and then I filed like a little groove in there to represent the river. My husband and I met on the river. We were both gold prospectors.
Go figure.
Okay. And so I sawed it in pieces of gold that he had found, and that's the brighter yellow. You can see how much yellower pure gold is.
So that's 24 karat gold in the middle of 14 karat?
Pretty much, yeah. It's 23 karat generally is what ours runs
So that
here.
must be 14 karat on there.
I would guess that that's 14, yes. So 24 is much yellower.
Well, karat, I always assumed it was the weight. It's not?
It's the purity.
Purity, okay.
It's the purity.
Test the purity with an acid or something. So if someone brings something to my shop that wants to sell it to me as gold, there's a way you can test it.
There's a testing kit, and it's like a little streak plate, and you would just like say take your ring and just run it on the streak plate, and it'll leave just a little tiny line of like gold.
Color and then
You would drop acid on that, depending on what color the acid turned or the gold turned, would tell you what carat it is.
Well, can we not do that with the stuff that I bought my wife?
yeah.
I'd rather she didn't know. She's downstream, yeah, we're good.
We're going to the next thing. What's next?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Now we're talking some motorized equipment, and we're getting into a dredge. So we're going to look at some dredges today. This is what we're going to show you next is one of the smallest dredges really available in size, and it's a 1-inch dredge. You're not really there to move material. You're there just to, get to those specific locations where you're trying to get it off a bedrock or work out of a crack or so forth. So very minimal amount of material, but your goal is to capture that gold. What you do process is hopefully the best spot, a little bit of material, and capture the gold. So,
all right, we'll head over to that part of the riverbank.
in general on this unit, we're just going to show you based on a little bit of gravel here, but normally we'd be doing this looking for spots on bedrock. Or if I had a little bit of bedrock below me, I'd dig some of that up, I'd process it, put it in a 5-gallon bucket, get down into a crack or so forth. But it's just a small...
Yeah, let's describe this for the radio audience. What does this look like?
Well, that is a good question. How can you
Because it looks like
compare
nothing
this?
I've ever seen in my life.
Backpack vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be the equivalent of
An upright Hoover.
a dust buster, the handheld dust buster, let's say. So it's not really much longer than that. It has a 16-inch hose off the front, and it runs powered at 12 volts, running a bilge pump, and we're using that in a jet that's on it to create a Venturi effect, so we can create suction. And then it's a sluice box from there on, and that's where everything gets processed and gold gets collected.
So when you're talking about the size of a dredge, you're talking about the size of the intake?
Generally, when you're talking about size, when you say 1 inch or 2 inch or 3 inch, that's the size of the hose, size of the intake nozzle. And this right here is a 1 inch. Every time you step up and you double the hose size, you quadruple the throughput. So as you go from a 1 inch to a 2 inch, you've got, based on the area of the circle, you've got 4 times the area.
Yeah, that was geometry. I flunked that.
Yeah. Well, it's the amount of material you're going to move, and as you can see, this is just sucking up the rocks.
It's not a strong suction. You just sort of...
Nope. Not too strong. Strong enough, actually, it will pull up a 1 ounce lead weight. So strong enough to do the job you're looking to do. Again, this is a tool that you focus on specific spots that hopefully a gold's in a crack in bedrock, or you've gotten down to bedrock, and especially underwater, there's almost no way to clean that last bit of material off of bedrock. So you need something that can pull it up.
So you do all your work for the day, and then you clean up with this.
Oh, you can do that also. This tool, I could use this to process material I've collected in another fashion, because the recovery in the sluice box is so well. This river is particularly known for garnet, and if you look at a lot of your granite rock that's in here, if you look close enough, you'll see these little specks of garnet all throughout the rocks, and that's where it's all coming from.
Well, I did notice every time you do any panning at all, what I'm seeing is a lot of garnet.
Yes. So it's just, this river is just loaded with garnet.
Every stream has its personality, you know, what's in it as far as garnet or black sands and gold, and it's one of the things, even if you don't find gold, what you do find in your pan for other heavy materials gives you kind of an idea of what's going on in the stream.
You ever get anything else precious? I mean, silver isn't as heavy.
We got one guy here that found a piece of platinum a couple years ago. There is more gems, stones in Maine than anything else, and that's more south of here towards
South Paris.
Yeah, really. In that area, you get into what's called pegmatite, and that's a streak of type of granite that goes from West Paris all the way down to Freeport, and that's got some really good gemstones in it. But you can find all of that stuff. But yeah, it's fine as anything that's worth money. Platinum's kind of rare.
I know what you're thinking. Doesn't this dredge suck up wildlife? Don't fish get caught in there? A couple of years ago, that question actually came in front of the legislature's Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Senator Tom Saviello of Wilton was on that committee at the time, and he's actually standing right here beside me, listening in.
Generally, your fish are very strong in fast water, and they have a very good sense of where they're at and what's around them. I've run bigger, equipment, 2 and 3 inch dredges on hose size, and never sucked up a fish because they have that sense and they're quick. They are very fast, and they'll get right out of the way if they feel any water pull on them or so forth. They're gone.
The story about you guys having trout dinners on lunchtime is not true.
Oh no,
that's true.
no. I think we had. So one person had a conversation that came up in one of the hearings where they said, we drove by a guy, he was dredging, and we said, how's the dredging or whatever, and he said, no, they were going fishing, so he was like, I've been sucking up trout all day, and he obviously must have been joking, but yet they took it like, they were, you were sucking up trout, but no, you won't find it. No, really, all the studies have done has said the same thing. They just don't.
This piece of equipment is one that you've made, then, correct?
Yes.
And the thing with this, if the fish does get sucked up through it, it just comes out the other end. There's no impeller or anything. It's just a hose. It just goes right straight through.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother them.
Same way they deliver them into the river, I guess.
A little surprised, maybe.
They hose them down there.
The fish goes through and says, "Woo!"
And then you get the one that likes it and keeps doing it.
Yeah.
We're in the stream bed of the Swift River in Byron. The Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club is showing me how to find gold. Last week's show was about the hand tools that are used for prospecting. This week, we're cranking up the power equipment. Now, anytime you put power equipment of any kind in any riverbed, eyebrows raise. You could hurt fish and other aquatic life. So what's right, and is there anyone doing it wrong? The next several minutes could get really interesting. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. It's part 2 of a 2-part show with the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club. There's a bunch of members here on the riverbank with me. We've got our feet wet in the Swift River in Byron, in Western Maine. I'm now standing over the star of today's show, a device that simultaneously sucks up and sorts out material from the riverbed. We're down to the mechanized area. What is it? I mean, I'm seeing something on floats. It's got the same kind of sluice box, really, but you're pumping material through it.
That's correct. It's called a suction dredge. This happens to be a 2.5 inch, meaning
The nozzle and the hose size is 2.5 inches in diameter. We have a larger one upstream. It's a 4-inch, which happens to be the largest one we can use in the state of Maine. Okay. What this is nothing more than an underwater vacuum. We have a gasoline motor. On it is a high-pressure pump where we bring water into the pump. It shoots it out under a high pressure into a Venturi vent.
Okay,
And a Venturi suction vent. You have one pipe coming into another pipe at a steep angle, and as it pushes out, it draws suction on the other end. And then that goes into the standard sluice box. All this does is process more material quicker than a standard sluice box.
So this rig had set you back how far?
This one here, brand new today, is about $1,800 to $2,000. Okay, a 4-inch is about $4,500 and up, depending upon all the accessories. We've maxed it out, I believe, at 7 horsepower. Okay, there's no reason to have anything larger than that. Back in the early 90s, one of our early club members helped write the state laws, or excuse me, the regulations with LERC, back when it was LERC. And since then, we've been very active in it because this is something that not everybody does. We enjoy it, and how can we protect it, as well as protecting the environment, protecting the fish. When I started out right over here working, the water was about 6 to 8 inches deep. Now I'm down about maybe 1.5 feet, and I got 3 small brook trout in the hole with me right now, because I'm rolling over some rocks and they're feeding on the bugs that I'm disturbing. And she asked one question about, well, can you suck up a fish? Boy, that's hard. Those little guys are so fast. It's not impossible, but it's extremely difficult. Okay, so, and if it did happen, there's nothing mechanical in their way through the process. It's just all water. So I guess no, it wouldn't hurt the fish. More so than them being dropped out of an airplane when they're stalking the lakes.
Yeah, really.
Another
place where they say, whee!
Exactly. But you see, Mother Nature is Mother Nature. She's going to do what she's going to do, and all we can do is stand on the sidelines and work with her, not against her.
So what would harm the fish throughout this activity? Is there...
If you drop the rock on it.
Yeah.
Seriously. If you drop the rock on it, is about the only way. Other than the spawning, if we got into an area where there's eggs. But we have regulations for that. Today is the last day we can motorize.
And then and they also put a front-end day when you can start motorizing again.
June 15th.
Their participation with the committee, they came in and said, these are the things we can do to protect fish, because they're not here about destroying fish habitat. They're here to enjoy a hobby, and that's what we recognized when we did the legislation.
And and there's trash in the river, unfortunately. There's lead shot from hunting. There's lead split shot, steel split shot, fish hooks. Unfortunately, glass. From people that have bottles. We find wedding rings. I found a gold tooth a couple years ago. A friend of ours, he found a Timex watch, and yes, it was still ticking. It's sitting on his shelf, isn't it, Phil? So, yeah, we try to, whenever we come across the trash, we absolutely, keep it and we dispose of it properly. Because this is our river. This is our Maine. We have to be good stewards, because I'm bringing my 6 grandchildren up here now, and we want to protect it. And how do we do that? We protect it with good, sensible legislation and good, sensible club activity to teach those that don't know how to do this.
Well, I'm glad somebody's doing sensible legislation, because I don't get to see that very often.
No. You and I do pretty good together.
As long as we can continue to talk, we'll have legislation. It makes sense. And it needs to be discussed in a very clean, concise manner. No tempers. Keep your passion at home. Let's legislate. Like I said earlier, I'm gonna steal a saying from Ronald Reagan. Let's legislate on facts, not feelings. I mean, if we can do that, then Maine is always going to remain a beautiful place. And why do we have people? Why do we call it vacation land? Because it is beautiful, and people from away come here. We need to keep that. How do we do that? By doing it right every single time. And our club's getting ready to, once again in the fall, cruise through the rivers and pick up, unfortunately, what trash other people leave behind. So that come springtime, hopefully, we don't have to deal with the trash.
Our biggest issues that we also see ourselves is people just don't really know what we do. You know, they hear us say prospecting and they immediately think backhoes in the river or something. You know, and this is I mean, the biggest piece of equipment you can use is a lawnmower engine. You know, I mean, it's in the size of your basic vacuum cleaner at home. It's very small equipment. Where the impact is very little. You can see how many rocks it is here. It doesn't matter if you have a big dredge, you can't pick that up. I mean, you got to move it by hand. So it's very slow. You're not digging a big area, and
there has been occasions, like up on the Cup Septic. That was a huge issue that pushed it into the point that it is now. Is that we had a couple of individuals up there who were applying the techniques illegally. They were digging into the banks, disturbing the trees, cutting trees. There was a lot of digging. We took pictures. They were mining. That's a difference. They were mining. Mm-hmm. And
outside of the recreational parameters, they were trying to make money.
Yes.
They were in there trying to get as much gold out, and they didn't really care how they did it. And it was bad. It was bad for us as recreational prospectors, and bad for trout and all that other stuff.
And the land management company decided enough was enough, and they decided to close all the land up there that they manage to all forms of prospecting, including panning. So, talking with them now, they've seen the new legislation, they've seen the new rules. The contact that I've been dealing with has changed her mind. And she knows, it's just like with hunting, with fishing, there's illegal activity. There's nothing you're going to do about it except try to catch them, okay? Try to educate people. Same thing in this sport. If we can assist those that are doing it wrong, teach them to do it right, they'll find more gold, and they'll make the landowners happy.
We're prospecting for gold today in Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I'm with the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club, and we're standing in the Swift River, just north of Coos Canyon in Byron, Maine. In just a couple of minutes, it's time to fire up these bad boys. Well, as bad as anything can be with a 7-horsepower motor. The dredges go to work next when we return on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. I'm on the search for gold in the Swift River in Byron with the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club. It's part 2 of a 2-part show. There's a bunch of club members here showing me the ropes. Last week I learned the hand gear. This week we're using the power equipment, in this case, dredges. You ready to fire it up?
Sure.
Now, first of all, you're in a wetsuit with a mask and gloves.
Yes.
So once this is fired up, what are you going to do?
I'm going to get on the business end of it, the nozzle. The reason why I wear a mask is so I can see how much material is going up the hose. Ideally, 10-15% material, the balance of it water. You need to allow the material to separate before it gets to the sluice box so that the heavies can stay in the sluice box. The heavies, what I mean by gold, platinum, lead, those things will stay in the sluice box. Gold being 5 times heavier than your normal dirt, 19 times heavier than water, it's not going to go very far. Okay, we hope. Okay, and our machines, we do really, really good. I mean, we find microscopic gold. These machines will catch it. Okay, up to M&Ms and whatever else is out there, which we will proudly not disclose. It's like fishing. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I got that part.
Okay.
So here we go.
Watch at the end of the sluice box and notice that there's really no silt coming out of the thing. I mean, that's one of the bigger complaints is that, well, we dig up and we get this silt material, but these streams have had so much water wash through them that the silt is gone. The only place the silt's really coming from is from the embankments on the edge.
Yeah, I've been looking for silt and I haven't seen any sign of silt whatsoever.
No, none. And it's maybe when you get down to the bottom, you get to a clay layer, it'll color it a little bit, but we don't dig in the clay. We dig to it, but not in it. So
Really not. The dredge is not that loud.
No,
I mean, it's no different than somebody out mowing their lawn. It actually may be quieter. A lot of these small engines now, they run smaller mufflers, or larger mufflers, I should say, just to keep them quieter. And you'll see later with our 4-inch dredge that we have set up, it's actually a little quieter than the 2.5 inch dredge. So motor size doesn't always mean louder. Most people have 2 inch or 2.5 because you can run them by yourself easily. A 4 inch you could run by yourself if you had to, but it's a lot more work. You got to keep moving, tending the box, going back to the nozzle. It all depends how deep into the sport you want to go.
Well, I was going to say, is there a time in the garage where you're looking all your stuff and say, you know, maybe I overdid it?
Yes, there's always that time, and usually you don't realize it till after you've already done it.
Now this is beginning to look like real work.
It starts to become real work when you get to this size. This is extreme recreation, I guess you could say. This is a 4 inch dredge. This is a Keen model dredge. They call it a 4 inch because of the opening on the nozzle, like we said before. This is a newer dredge, but when you fill this up with water, we have 20 feet of hose at 4 inches full of water. You can see it gets extremely heavy real quick. This dredge is currently at the max of what Maine allows. It's 7 horsepower. I'm a little under on the size of the sluice box. It's a 4 inch hose with a 4 inch opening, and I also have air for air regulator for diving on mine, and it can take you a while to really learn what you're looking for. I'm sitting on a big rock right now. That's what I'm looking at. I'm downstream of that large rock, a boulder, and that's where I'm going to dredge the gravel up behind it, because the gold will come over that boulder and around it, and there's an eddy created behind it, a low pressure area, and the gold will drop into that and stay there while the rest of the lighter debris moves on.
This little section of bedrock we got behind us that goes across, that's almost like a ripple in a sluice box. You got that water going over the top. You can, you get down the bottom of that. It's another good spot.
Yeah, and obviously it looks like a good spot, and somebody's been in there multiple times at this point.
Most likely, yeah. This area does get dredged a lot, and but you got a couple good storms, you can come in here in the spring and do just as well as somebody did last year.
So is there an emphasis on getting out here as early in the season as you can before others get here?
Sometimes, I guess. I mean, mostly it's just because we've been inside for 5 or 6 months and really raring to go. So
I have been out. The first year I got into this, first prospecting in general, I bought a pan. It was March. In fact, it was early March, and I was out with my pan in a backpack on my snowmobile and looking for little streams and little areas where the snow had punched a hole through so I could get down to a little bit of gravel and pan it out. And you find out you need some very warm gloves and some patience. About an hour into it, and you had enough for the day.
Yeah,
because once the cold gets into you, it's hard to get out.
Have you ever thought about taking up bowling instead, kids? We'll wrap it up with another visit with Rosie Rosbury. She owns the Coos Canyon Rock and Gift Shop just downstream from where we are right now. She's the historian of the group.
Well, I was born and raised here, so 50 plus years. My dad was a rock hound, gold prospector. We were always out looking for something. So always out on the river. Learned how to pan back before I really knew what I was supposed to do with a gold pan, other than chase the little fish around with it and try to catch them. But I remember, once you find that first piece of gold, it's kind of like, ooh, this is how it works. And then you're kind of hooked. The first gold, they say, that was found here in Byron was found in the crop of a chicken. And the farmer had remembered going to the Swift River and shoveling up the gravel for his hens to peck at. And taking it back home, and so went back to the river, found more gold. So started the gold rush. That's the story. No written evidence to back that up.
At this point, my wife Sandy joins in. There's been a bunch of us in the river this morning, 8 or 9 members of the club, State Senator Tom Saviello, who's here, and my wife Sandy. While I was looking at the dredges, Rosie was just downstream teaching her how to pan for gold. She's now brought the pan back up to us to check out a couple of possibilities.
Either of those? I'm afraid not. I am going to find a piece of gold, though, so I can show you how you tell the difference. I'm going to stick that one in my pocket, and hopefully it's pretty small, but hopefully I'll find it to show you and compare to later.
Okay.
But you're doing good. You're getting down to the pink sand, the garnet, so you're doing it properly. It's just a matter of finding that needle in the haystack. You just need to find the gravel that has a piece of gold in it, and then you'll find it because you've got the technique down.
Well, the last time I forgot to put the classifier screen on top, so I had to pick out all those big rocks by myself.
Right, so it saves you some time
Yeah.
using the classifying screen, yeah.
Won't make that mistake again. Great, thank you.
Okay, gonna try again?
I am.
But this is where it gets interesting. In order to show Sandy what to look for, Rosie takes out 2 small flakes from her own collection and drops them into the next pan full of sediment. Sandy works the pan and slowly, there's the first one, and there's the second, and there's the third. Third? It appears we struck gold. So we'll end on that high note. If you're interested, the Central Maine Gold Prospectors Club has a website and a Facebook page, and they do invite first-timers to come along on anything they do. If you want to share this show with somebody, it's now up on the website at 929theticket.com. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Join me again every Saturday at 9, Sunday at 8 on Sports Radio 929 The Ticket.